Welcome to this presentation for the Friends of People with Aphasia. In this DVD, we'll be exploring what it means to have aphasia and what you as a friend can do to help. We'll be hearing from some speech pathologists and looking at the journey of those who've been in a similar situation as yourself. After all, they're the experts on this topic.
In the early stages of her recovery, my friend's ability to speak was severely hampered.
Aphasia was certainly was certainly very profound in that it was almost total loss of language.
Kathy's speech was very limited when she first had the stroke, but she's certainly very expressive and she's got a lot of gestures and a lot of non-verbal language that she uses to help communicate.
There were no recognisable words at all. It was just a flow of gibberish, and it was apparent that he thought that he was talking or communicating.
Our interaction in the early days of her having aphasia was difficult, but we found ways of communicating that weren't necessarily verbal.
It was certainly frustrating when he would know what he was trying to communicate by symbols or sketches or charades or gestures, and sometimes we could get it, sometimes we couldn't, and we would be able to get it more easily by thinking, what is he likely to be wanting to talk about, rather than trying to read into the symbols or the gestures.
You know, my opinion of it is that the stroke itself, as opposed to the aphasia, was the bigger issue. I think just the grief around, you know, opportunity and lost dreams, what seemed large at the time, and those first couple of weeks in hospital, Kath seemed a little depressed.
Having aphasia can impact on social involvement, and communication difficulties can make it really hard to maintain relationships. Your friendship can mean a great deal to the person with aphasia and their carer, both in the early days of recovery and in the long term. Friends are important for all of us. They provide companionship, advice and support. They make us feel valuable, and they reduce isolation, boredom and depression.
I think the most important thing is spending time with that person and getting a level of comfort, because it can be very anxiety provoking. Even when I meet people with aphasia for the first time, not knowing their communication, there's a sense of, I don't want to say the wrong thing, or what if I don't understand what they're trying to communicate. And I think that becomes easier the more time you spend with the person.
Be company, sit and be, and talk to him, understanding that there's going to be not a lot coming back, but it was enough that he wants to be with us, enjoy company.
Just to be there as a support, at times to be her voice when she really didn't know, and because, as I said before, we've known each other a long time, and I knew when it came to friends or places or a context that I could fill in the gaps, and to some degree, even now when I believe she's, you know, doing very well, occasionally I'll fill in the gaps.
Friends are for support and more than just being buddies. If there's things that need to be done in terms of support, we're sort of aware of that.
And often families are held together by sort of the routine of daily life, that you can often do things in your daily life without necessarily needing a lot of communication, but friendships are much more bound by conversation and interaction. So I think they are really the ones that probably do need more support in how to sort of interact and deal with a person with aphasia.
I think for me, just the biggest thing that impacted the interaction in the early days was just, you know, I think the sense of grief that I had for Kathy, and wondering how that was going to play out in her life.
Shock, horror was my first reaction, frustration over time when I realised that she understood everything I said but just couldn't verbalise it. And then it was just a question of being patient.
Sadness, because he was profoundly affected in speech and mobility and dexterity, and optimism that through his drive and Heather's support that they worked their way through it, and through rehab, if it was possible, he'd get some speech and mobility back.
It can be hard for you to accept the changes that you see in your friend, and you may have your own feelings to deal with. However, your relationship can be just as rewarding and enjoyable for you as it is for your friend.
People will tend to see the person in hospital, but it's often when the person goes home after several months that they find that their friendship network disappears.
My friends talking has improved enormously. I'd say for somebody that didn't know her, they probably wouldn't know. Only occasionally would you get a sense that there's a word loss or a struggle for a word. For those people that knew her from before her stroke, there might be some sort of sign, but for the most part, no.
There's some improvement. He's he's done quite a bit of work on it. The vocabulary has increased a bit.
Well, Kathy has a very active life. She's always out with her family doing all the normal things that she did before. You know, she goes to... We have children in the same school, so she is always at every school concert. You know, she still goes out to parties. You know, she's still a valuable contributing member of her family and her broader, you know, life, you know, that she's always had. I don't think anyone would leave Kath because she couldn't speak. She's just, we love her just as much as we ever did.
The first words that he found were yes, wow, coffee.
I guess we do the sort of things that we always used to do, and which is to, you know, socially to go out, to see movies, go to restaurants, see friends. Basically what we did before she suffered a stroke. Yeah, it feels no different to what we did before.
We still have as much fun together. We laugh all the same ways we did. There's all the same jokes. You know, we have a shared history. That's a nice thing, and we're able to communicate that with each other. And you know, and it wouldn't matter what words were there. We've always, you know, we've just got a language that exists there for us.
For his art, he swapped from from right-handed to left-handed, and now he's well, he's had a number of exhibitions that's post-stroke, and that's interesting too. That the post-stroke, the palette of colours and the vocabulary of shapes and that sort of thing changed noticeably, but it's a different sort of art now.
As all her friends and family do, it's something that I accept as being part of who she is. Obviously I'd love it to go away, and I know she's frustrated by it, in the sense that she knows it's not going to go away. And I guess I've had to learn to live with it as well, as much as she has. But it's not something jarring anymore, it just is.
He's still working on improvement, but it's not as though he's depressed or frustrated or something. He's just doing what he can do.
We dance at parties.
You know, really, from my experience of working with people with aphasia over the years, I think the thing that stands out is the sense that the person is still there, and the communication impairment masks that person sometimes, because the way in which we socialise for most of us is through being able to talk
and to listen and to understand what each other's saying. So the aphasia really can get in the way of that. But at the end of the day, the person is still there, and I think many people are put off when they first start interacting with their friend after the stroke, for example, and they can't use the old ways of communicating, and that makes them feel as though the person's not there. So I think, you know, a really strong message I have is around encouraging that friend to remember what it was about their friend that they most loved, and what activities they used to do that were most enjoyable, and wherever possible to try and offer that again. And of course it's going to be challenging. It's not going to be the same. The situation's really altered. But I think if you approach a person with an attitude of you know, respect and, in the case of friendship, love, then you're starting from a very strong position, and the person with aphasia will respond positively to that as well.
I guess the most important thing is to remember that their mind is not gone just because they can't verbalise.
If you've got somebody that you love or you've shared life with, you know, you find a way to communicate through, you know, those absences of speech. Some things go beyond words.
Someone who just wants to get their old friend back is probably not going to get to a point of comfort with their friend as much as someone who sort of takes on board sort of the new limitations.
Logically, I know that they're different, and that Kathy can't communicate in that verbal sense, but, you know, and I would love that for her. That would be fantastic for her and for her children and for Stephen. But, you know, at the end of the day, I don't feel like anything has been lost, because she's still who she always was, and, you know, and that's bigger than words.
Knowing this person for so many years and what her level of language was like before her stroke, and the ease of her language, it's hard, obviously, for me to know. I know what it was like before and how easy it was for her. So of course there are times when it hurts to see that she's struggling.
I think in some respects there's an acceptance of this is the way it is. For Nick and Heather, life is good.
I just think she's like a good bottle of wine. She's getting better with age, and I don't think aphasia is changing that.
The attitude of the friend is the most important thing. So, and the attitude of the person with aphasia comes into it a lot as well. I know some people with aphasia who have no meaningful speech at all, who are much more happy in this world than most of us, because they've found a place. Part of being a friend of the person with aphasia is being that friend. It's not trying to get them to reteach them to talk. It's being a friend.
If we talk about something which was common ground in terms of past experiences or food or wine or art, the recognition, we felt there was recognition in terms of smiles or frowns or what reaction that we'd expect.
At times you have to step in and say, okay, I know what word you're thinking of, but not to be demeaning in that, just to say, okay, hold on, or simply be patient enough to wait for that person to try.
Closed questions that demanded yes, no answer.
That don't be frightened, and don't feel discouraged. That, you know, there is every opportunity that you can go on and have a successful and you know, rewarding relationship with, you know, the words are gone but the person's still there, and everything that your relationship stood for still exists there.
They see Kath the person, not Kath in a wheelchair.
And it's amazing how much you can get by without speaking. as well. So people being able to do things like wander through the garden, play cards, look at just literally sit on the couch next to each other and you know, look at a TV program. These are things that would have gone on before and don't require a lot of, you know, verbal interchange. But there's a kind of confidence issue that people, I think, have to step through when they first start interacting again with the person with aphasia. So what is my message? It's something around, you know, being brave, being brave and trying to recall, you know, what it was that you really valued in that friendship and in that relationship before, and really having faith that that can be re-established in different ways.
For more information about aphasia and local support groups, contact the Australian Aphasia Association. Their website is www.aphasia.org.au